Well, the moment at hand is very close upon us. NFL playoff time, thankfully. This hasn't exactly been a banner regular season. Let us all hope that the playoffs will be a different story. I know I most certainly hope so. Now, I know some people do playoff prediction videos and they'll go game by game with their videos, or they'll do it round by round. I'm not trying to do all that crap. I'm just giving you one big pick ahead of time. I'm just going to do all the rounds at once, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I really don't care. If I'm right, then by God, do I look like a genius, huh? Just saying. So here we go. My 2016/17 NFL playoff prediction video. Let's get started. And we'll start off with the AFC. Your six playoff teams. New England's the 1 seed. Kansas City's the 2 seed. They're both going to be watching the action this weekend to see who they play next week in the divisional round. Pittsburgh's the 3 seed hosting the 6 seed Miami Dolphins. And then the Houston Texans, champions of the AFC South, are hosting the wild card Oakland Raiders from the AFC West, who are the 5 seed. When I look at the AFC matchups, I look at Pittsburgh, Miami first. I'd be stunned if Pittsburgh isn't angry about the way Jay Ajayi ran all through them earlier on in the season, and they wouldn't come out and try to put the Miami Dolphins away early on, especially with their backup quarterback. I really like the Pittsburgh Steelers in this matchup. I just don't see how the Dolphins are going to be able to hang with them at Heinz Field. Big Ben's healthy, Antonio Brown's healthy, Le'Veon Bell's healthy. The Steelers are just going to be too much. So I'll take the Steelers. And then in the what is perceived to be the ugly-ass game, the Raiders going to Houston to take on the Texans. This game could be sneaky good, but probably will be a bit of a painful watch. I know a lot of the popular thought is going to be on the Oakland Raiders, even with the rookie quarterback, because the assumption is going to be that Brock Osweiler stinks, he's terrible, and the Raiders still will have enough to beat them. Well, I'm kind of going back to the tried and true method of, teams that are successful in the playoffs in this particular game alone. The Texans' defense is much better, and the Oakland Raiders' defense could potentially make Brock Osweiler look okay. DeAndre Hopkins could have a decent day, as could Lamar Miller. I know even though they're the higher seed, this will probably be viewed as an upset, but I'll take the Houston Texans behind Brock Osweiler, believe it or not, to beat the Oakland Raiders. On the NFC side, you've got the Cowboys, the 1 seed, and the Falcons, the 2 seed. They're at home watching this weekend, see who they play next. You got Seattle as the 3 seed, champs of the NFC West, hosting the wild card Detroit Lions. And then the other matchup, you've got the wild card from the NFC East, the New York Giants, traveling to Lambeau Field, the frozen tundra. Seems like it's a replay. Every few years, it's Giants versus Packers in Lambeau in the playoffs. And then they're taking on Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. In terms of Seattle-Detroit, it might be easy to dismiss Detroit here because they kind of skidded into the playoffs, losing their last 3 games. But, you're talking about a Detroit Lions team that still made the playoffs, so we can't totally discredit them. You've got a guy in Matthew Stafford. This is a really big moment in time for him. He really needs to win this playoff game or at least do very, very well, because there's a lot of questions about his performances in big games, his performances against good teams. The history just isn't there that he does all that well. Now, with that said, Seattle hasn't really been all that impressive to me the second half of the season. The loss of Earl Thomas is still significant. They don't run the ball as well as they once did. For being a franchise quarterback, Russell Wilson has some really, really ugly-ass games. And no, that's not all his fault. It's just the way it is. But you're talking about going into Seattle, Legion of Boom, while the Lions last regular season almost beat them there, and they got hosed at the end with a botched call. I'd expect the Seahawks to be able to find a way to at least win this playoff game because they have so much playoff experience. They got to be able to figure out a way to get it done. And then we get to the game that, to me, is the money matchup of the week, and I'm sure everybody agrees. This is the one that everybody's looking forward to, the Giants and the Packers. You've got 2 teams, arguably, to me, that appear to be the biggest threats to Dallas in the NFC. And fortunately for Dallas, one of them is going to knock the other out. So Dallas, on their path potentially to the Super Bowl, is only going to have to worry about one of these 2 teams. Now, this team of the Giants feels a little bit like the Giants teams that won the 2 Super Bowls in the past. Difference being, though, is the Giants behind Jacobs and Bradshaw were a much better running team then in 2007 and 2011 than they are here in 2016 with Paul Perkins and Rashad Jennings. But that Giants defense is really good, but I don't know if it's going to matter. Aaron Rodgers is going to, I think, remember this thing several years back, losing in the divisional round, coming off of a 15-1 regular season, the Giants coming in there and upsetting them. He's going to remember that feeling. You also talk about a Packers team that has an incredible amount of momentum, winning 6 games in a row. I really like the Packers in this matchup to advance to the divisional round. So now we get to the divisional round. That means it's New England hosting Houston, and it's going to be Kansas City hosting Pittsburgh. Uh, Houston, doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, they don't have a chance against New England. So the Patriots are on to the AFC Championship game. It's almost, you can almost write it in pen and etch it in stone. But the other AFC match, you've got the Steelers traveling to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs. Earlier on this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely boat raced and destroyed the Chiefs. Now, this isn't necessarily the same team that they boat raced early on in the season, but there's still the confidence of the Steelers that they've beaten this team once and they can do it again. Now, for Kansas City, the key is going to be taking away either Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell. They have to take away one of those two guys. And they need to keep this game close, because if Pittsburgh gets on top early at all, the Chiefs are in big time trouble, because with Alex Smith, they just lack the explosive elements in their offense to be able to play catch-up football and put points on the board in a hurry, even against that questionable to bad Steelers secondary. Now, Tyreek Hill could be a difference maker. There's no question. And he makes a big difference for this team. You see a lot of love for the Kansas City Chiefs, but to me, ultimately, for a long period of time, over the past 2+ months, I've really felt there's one team that really truly can give the Patriots fits in the AFC, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And with some of the playoff experience and leadership they have, especially with Big Ben, I'll take the team with the better quarterback here. Even though I have concerns about the Steelers on the road, I'm going to take the Steelers to beat the Chiefs. So that's going to mean Pittsburgh going to Foxborough to take on the Patriots at Gillette Stadium in the AFC Championship game. Oh, baby. What a marquee matchup. Then you've got Green Bay going to Dallas and Seattle going to Atlanta. Now, in terms of Green Bay and Dallas handled this Green Bay Packers team easily early on in the year. But this is not the same Packers team. I hedge to get too confident about a team ultimately with a rookie starting quarterback. And at the end of the day, you might sit there and say you value the teams in the playoffs that can play good defense and run the football. Well, the Cowboys definitely can run the football. But when it comes down to it, at some point in time, you need the quarterback to make the big plays in the clutch spots. And I have much more confidence in Aaron Rodgers being able to do that than I do somebody like a Dak Prescott. That's no offense to Dak, but we're comparing him to me, the guy who's right at the top of the list of the best in the game today. The Packers are hot. They have a ton of momentum. The Cowboys getting that week off probably doesn't do them a lot of justice. This is not a team with a lot of playoff experience, and the pressure in the spotlight could be too big. So I'm going to take the Packers to beat the Cowboys. And then in the other matchup, I really like the Falcons to beat the Seahawks. I don't think the Seahawks have been a very good road team. I don't think they'll travel well, especially with the loss of Earl Thomas. You're going to have a healthy Julio Jones. You got a two-headed backfield with Freeman and Coleman. Matt Ryan's playing at an MVP-type level this year. I'm going to take the Falcons to advance to the NFC Championship game where they'll host the Green Bay Packers. So to me, you have an NFC-AFC Championship situation where both of these games feature marquee quarterbacks. Both of these games feature high-scoring, potentially explosive, high-powered offenses. If we got this for an AFC and NFC Championship game, man, would I be freaking excited. When I first look at the AFC Championship game, the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's kind of felt like for a lot of people all year that the New England Patriots, it's their time. They didn't get it done last year in the AFC Championship game against the Broncos, but now they'll have home and field advantage in Foxborough, and they'll be able to get the job done. And it wouldn't surprise me if they ultimately kind of just steamroll through to Super Bowl 51. I wouldn't be that surprised about it at all. But for a couple of months now, like I talked about, I've really felt like the Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the few teams in all the National Football League, and especially in the AFC, that could give the Patriots some problems. The Patriots on defense love to take away your best option. But the problem is when you're talking about the Steelers, if you take away Antonio Brown, then you have to deal with Le'Veon Bell. If you take away Le'Veon Bell, it opens up things potentially big time for Antonio Brown, and there is no guarantee that the Patriots defense can stop either one of them. And when I look at the Patriots, you're talking about a team that doesn't have Gronk. There's something about them. It reminds me of some of the other Patriots teams that would win 12, 13 games, get to the AFC Championship game, but I just didn't think they had enough to get over the hump. And I don't know that this team has enough to get over the hump. They have the best coach in the world, granted, But I really like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we'll probably look back in 2 weeks and laugh our asses off at my pick here, because I'm kind of going out on a limb a little bit. I'm picking the Steelers to win 2 straight road playoff games when they really struggled on the road this year, and Big Ben in particular is an entirely different guy on the road. But Big Ben's been there before. He's done it before. He knows what it's like to compete and play playoff football. And if there's one quarterback that can match up with Tom Brady in the AFC, it's Big Ben. So I'm picking the Pittsburgh Steelers to go to the Super Bowl. And then on the NFC side, you've got Green Bay, you've got Atlanta. You look at it, and Atlanta's got the home field advantage. Atlanta, to me, is a little bit more of a balanced and complete football team. But there is something about that Mo, man. I'm telling you, there is something about that Mo. And that Green Bay offense is on fire. And while Vic Beasley's had a nice season, the Falcons still at times really struggle to generate pressure on Aaron Rodgers or on the starting quarterbacks. And if you give Aaron Rodgers a ton of time, he will pick apart that less than stellar Falcons secondary. See, it almost doesn't seem right. It feels like in 2 weeks, like I said, we're going to come back and we're going to laugh at my picks here. But I'm really going to pick the Green Bay Packers to beat the Falcons in the NFC Championship game and move on to the Super Bowl. So we're getting a rematch of the Super Bowl from 6 years ago. That's right. That's exactly what we're getting. What was it, Super Bowl 45? I think, who cares? I think it's going to be Pittsburgh and Green Bay in the Super Bowl. And at the end of the day, I'll take the Green Bay Packers behind Super Bowl MVP Aaron Rodgers, who would probably throw for like 330 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game, especially against that Pittsburgh secondary. And Big Ben's probably going to have a monster game too. That's right, Pittsburgh Steelers, Green Bay Packers. That's my Super Bowl. Yeah. And I think the Super Bowl MVP is going to be Aaron Rodgers. Final score, maybe something like 31-27. And maybe the Packers get one last-ditch defensive stop when they really need it, or Big Ben makes one mistake. Something's going to happen, but that's the way I see it. Be cool to see in a few weeks how this all plays out. I could either look like a genius and a football god, or I can look like a complete knucklehead. I'll hope for the former, probably more so the latter. But I guess we'll see. Feel free to give me your playoff predictions. Feel free to give me your Super Bowl picks. And ultimately, who you think is going to hoist the Lombardi Trophy this year. Should be interesting to see you guys duke it out in the comments.